Okay, we're here at the Isaac Lightner farmhouse, and we're about to go into the Walnut College, which was one time the summer kitchen, and we're going to look at the famous beehive oven that we talked about as we were shooting videos on the outside. We're going to go ahead and let Eileen take over here and explain a little bit about this oven in this room.
Okay, here we are in the Walnut Cottage. This room that we are in, and you can see it's not real large. This is the extent of the summer kitchen. All of the farms in the area would have had a summer kitchen out back of the house, usually at very close distance. This one is probably about 15 feet from the back door of the original house. And this is where the cooking would have been done in the warm months. There is another kitchen that we'll show you next stop when we go down into the lower level. But this room definitely would have been used for butchering, for making soap, and right there is the opening to the bread oven that you saw on the previous videos. Now, all that's original, unfortunately, is this wall right here, the stone wall. And then when you look at the brick fireplace surround, that is new. And if you come over here, here is a section of the original fireplace. Wow. And that the bake oven was part of. My guess is that that original stonework was crumbling. And again, I believe this was done in the 1960s when Dr. Voss was doing his restoration project. So ignore the brickwork. It is new. And try to imagine that this would have been a square fireplace. It was stone, but it would have been covered in stucco. It would have been plastered over. So it looked quite different. But that's the original door, and that's the original wall to the oven.
Now, Eileen, in our videos outside, we had talked about why the Isaac Lightner farmhouse was such an excellent location for a field hospital. And of course, we talked about the fresh water supply of White Run. We talked about the ground and its elevation. You know, we walked just out here to the north and seen where you could actually see the entire battlefield. Yes. Just from beyond the farmhouse. We also talked about, and the soldiers remembered and wrote about how they were cooked for with the beehive oven. And yes. What exactly is a beehive oven? Why was it so popular? And what was it good for cooking for? And maybe things it wasn't good for cooking for during the American Civil War.
It actually is strictly an oven, so it was used only for baking, not for cooking per se. The cooking would have been done, and again, it's hard to picture. When we get down to the lower level, we'll talk a little bit more about how the cooking was done, because that original fireplace is still down there. So, but I'll tell you about baking. When you open this metal door, you see a hearth that looks very much like a wood-fired pizza oven. And I think most of us can relate to that. Granted, a lot of times if you're in an Italian restaurant, they have a gas-fired pizza oven rather than wood-fired, so a little bit different. But what you do with these ovens is there is a brick hearth inside. I can't open it, it's sealed off, otherwise I would open it and show you. But there's a brick hearth in that oven. Again, think of a pizza oven. And you would build the fire on the hearth. They used a hardwood. An elderly man I knew who was really good at firing these ovens liked apple wood. So, but you build your fire in there, you allow it to burn down to coals, and then you use a long implement, not this, I'll tell you about this in a second, but it's like a rake, and so you pull out the coals, and then you have another implement, still isn't this one, that has strips of linen on the end, and you dip that into a bucket and you wipe down the hearth because you don't want a lot of ash on the hearth. And then you use this, it's called a bread peel, P-E-E-L, and you put your unbaked loaf of bread on there and slide it into the oven. bring it out, of course, and put another loaf in. I would guess by the size of this oven that you probably could bake at least 10 loaves of bread, maybe even 12 loaves of bread at one baking. Now, before you got to that step, though, you had to test to make sure your temperature was okay. There are a number of ways to check the temperature in there. Some of the housewives actually like to spit into the oven, and the way it bounced told them how hot it was. I have no idea how that works. I once volunteered at a historic site where we had a bake oven. We would simply put our hand into the oven and count by seconds. If we could keep it in for 5 seconds, and then it was hot and we had to pull it out, it was a good temperature for baking bread. If you put your hand in and literally within 2 seconds you have to pull it out, the oven was fired too hot, and you just wait maybe 15 minutes and then put your bread in. If you unfortunately put your arm in and you count up to 10, it is not hot enough, and you may just as well start all over again and build a fire and heat it up. So that was their temperature gauge. They did not have thermometers. And the bread goes in first and bakes. I'm sure each oven was a little different, and I'm sure the housewives learned how long it was going to take to bake their bread. You pull the bread out, that's done, and then you fill it with pies. And that's it. It is not good for baking cakes. So it's a bread oven and a pie oven. And Mr. Lightner told his daughters that they needed to go to school only long enough to learn their ABCs and how to count how many pies they're baking for him.
Wow.
So we know that this definitely held a lot of pies.
Excellent. Okay, well, we have taken a look here inside of what used to be the summer kitchen, and today is used as the Walnut Cottage here at the Isaac Lightner Farm, and of course the historic beehive oven that you can read about or watch on our previous videos. It is in the same oven here that the soldiers staying here who were wounded were cooked for and cared for in this home and in this summer kitchen. This has been the summer kitchen inside the Isaac Lightner Farm on Gettysburg Battlefield.
Okay, we're going to go down into our lower level now, which we call the gathering room. But in actuality, it was the first kitchen for the farmhouse. So let's go down the steps.
Now, Eileen, the guests that stay here as you run a bed and breakfast, are they able to come down into these areas?
This room's open 24/7 as a gathering room. This is a place to sit, maybe have a glass of wine before dinner, watch TV, just gather with your friends. But this is the fireplace I was talking about when we were in the Walnut Cottage.
Okay.
And this is the fireplace that is original, and it was actually the first kitchen for the farmhouse. Now, there's another very intriguing point about this room that we're in now. According to Mr. Lightner's writings, as I said upstairs, when he purchased this property in 1841, there was originally an old house here. He went on to say that in 1862, he tore down the old house and built the new one over top on the same site. So I am saying with pretty much certainty that this is part of that first building, the much older one. I have no idea when it was built, although, you know, I purely guesswork would say maybe late 1700s. This cooking fireplace would have originally been covered with stucco. It would have been plastered. And I'm just saying that because I've seen enough of them in my lifetime that I've never seen one that was exposed stone. And when you look at the mortar, you can see that this fireplace, the stones were repointed, you know, within the not too distant future. This is not mortar from the late 1700s or the early 1800s. But anyway, having said that, it is original. You can see where they did their cooking and how they did their cooking. Certainly with the proper equipment and so forth, you can cook anything in a cooking fireplace. You can make toast, you can fry, you can roast, you can bring things to a boil, pretty much anything you want to cook. The thing is, it's very labor intensive, and it's very hot and very dirty work. And in the 19th century, the second leading cause of death for women, and the first cause was childbirth, more women died in childbirth than anything else. Second leading cause of death was burning to death at the cooking fireplace.
Wow.
So that really puts into perspective what it was like. Now, this floor in this area was a hard earthen floor. It was a dirt floor until 1960, when Dr. Voss put this brick floor down.
And today, as the bed and breakfast, this is used as a gathering room.
It
Just
is.
sit down, you said, have a glass of wine,
Relax,
relax
so
around on the couch.
There's an interesting shadow box display case over here, and a couple of the questions that people might have would be answered in this shadow box. This on the background here is Isaac Lightner's inventory when he died in 1880, a list of the things he owned. And over here, a little bit difficult to read, but you can see it's from the War Department. This is a letter Mr. Lightner received telling him that his damage claims have been, I'm looking for the correct word, they have been dismissed for no further consideration. In other words, even though he claimed over $2,000 in damages because of this being used as a hospital, the War Department said, forget about it, we're dismissing your claim. So there's the answer to that question. He never got any money.
He never got money for any of it.
Fortunately, he was well-to-do, and he didn't really suffer.
And we did talk about that on some of our videos outside, that, you know, he had lost crops, he had lost sheets and furniture and even wood that he had in the barn, which he had just built the house and he wasn't quite done it. There were other things in the planning that he was doing.
500 feet of sawed lumber, he said.
So he didn't receive anything from the government, which was quite common during the time. I'm sure that the government had some money issues of their own just after running a war, you know. So, but yeah, this is a really neat place here. Today it's used as a bed and breakfast. What's the best way for people to have the opportunity and the privilege of staying in an old historic place like this?
Well, Lightner Farmhouse has its own Facebook page, and knowing that you folks who are watching this are already on Facebook, please go to Lightner Farmhouse and give us a like. And our website is lightnerfarmhouse.com.
Excellent. Well, this has been our series of videos inside the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse with the owner, proprietor, Eileen Hoover. We've taken a look today at some of the key rooms inside, some of the things that if you do come here to stay, that you'll get to see and experience on your own. And for those of you that live a distance away and never have been or may never be able to come to Gettysburg, we've given you a little exclusive look inside the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse here. So I wanted to thank Eileen for her time today, and thanks again to everybody on the page for continuing to support and watch the videos. We hope you enjoyed this one. This has been inside the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse, a field hospital for the 1st Corps Army here at White Run on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.